terms of sectors in China, what would you invest into today?
Yeah. In terms of sector, I think the new infrastructure is a theme that is new, but I think it's for reasonable timing that you should start right now because of the fiscal policy that I mentioned. After the MPC meeting in March, we understand a lot of local provincial government, they're expecting about 5.5% GDP growth for their domestic, provinces, and a lot of it is driven by infrastructure project. So if you look at the sector exposure among the mutual fund in China, the largest sector exposure is manufacturing sector, 35%. And then if you look at the insurance company, the largest sector exposure they have right now is 20%, is in the new energy, EV. So infrastructure project or related sector exposure, they have been underweighted for a long, long time. So what happened right now recently is they're increasing, but they are not on a full-blown mode. I was being asked whether the new infrastructure, the 5G, the mobile network, that type of infrastructure should overweight, or the old infrastructure like the toll road company, like the building company, or to some extent, some cement manufacturer, the old kind of like infrastructure. Those companies are trading at 10 times price to earnings. My bet, if you like, we should both at the same time. So the whole infrastructure sector should get a lifting while you wait for the tech sector to be increasing, because this will be a stable long-term money, local and global coming in. So I think sector number one, new and old infrastructure, sector. The second is mid-class domestic consumption. If you see there is a lot of, tax cutting, subsidy is coming in. The key for this sector is mid to small caps. They create 70% of jobs in China. So every year there is 10 million fresh graduate. And then with a GDP growth of 5.5%, we are generating 12 million jobs per year in China. So creating jobs, ensuring the unemployment rate is not skyrocketing is one of the key policy. Stability growth, 稳增长 is the key words for this year. So you are going to see a lot of this type of subsidy. So those companies will get uplifted. So mid and small caps, domestic consumption, in particular focusing on the tier 4, tier 3, tier 4 cities. And then within this mid and small buckets, we are also overweighting high-end manufacturing, which is the hardware tech that I mentioned. Actually, some of them, their earnings growth is up about 40% this year already. So this is the sector that we are focusing in. And then last but not least, I think EV and green type of sector still merit and looking at it, but this is a crowded space already. A lot of people already have exposure on it. I don't think there is any big differentiation by overweighting it, because you would see it's a crowded trade when there is a risk of this one will go down. But I think domestic consumption is a border place that you can do stock specific. Last but not least, on the real estate sector, I have two views. One is for family office, global investor, you should go now to the tier 1 and tier 2 city to do distress, meaning that scooping up, buying the property buildings, the commercial building, the residential buildings. I think there are really some high quality grade A buildings that some of the real estate developer, they have no choice to sell it out. So I think for long-term investor, this is really a distress. And I've seen some funds actually being launched in picking up those. I think it's one way of doing it. And, tier 1 city, Beijing, Shanghai, this is a no-brainer. And then for the real estate sector in general, there are more support, there is more subsidy, for example, extending loans, to the real estate developer. And now we are talking about, even in Shanghai and Beijing, the Chinese government is encouraging the banks to borrow more to the first-time home buyer as well. So I think the overall real estate sector has passed their worst timing. I think it's now recovering. But from my perspective, it's still too early to buy the stocks as well as bonds. So I would go for the hard asset if you want to play the real estate theme.